We'll move on to the Financial Service Providers Register now. Now, just for a little bit of background, I guess, for our viewers, obviously the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, MB, is trying to crack down on the abuse of the Financial Service Providers Register by firms that register in New Zealand but operate overseas. And the FMA comes into this picture because the FMA has the power to direct the Registrar of Companies to remove firms from the Financial Service Providers Register where they're likely to be giving a false or misleading impression about the extent to which they're regulated in New Zealand. Now, this, my personal view, that's pretty crazy predicament that we found ourselves in here. I guess from the FMA's perspective, firstly, I'm interested in how much time and resource you're actually spending on this issue.
Yeah, and it's worth saying at the beginning that, again, these are regulations that had an inbuilt review period in them. So the review that's happening now, as luck would have it, was designed to happen. So we've been spending a lot of time and resource, both in terms of scrubbing the register, deregistering or exercising our powers to direct the deregistration of those entities that we didn't think belonged on there. Now, we always expected some challenge. The way it's been set up, a lot of those entities, in our view, don't need to be on the register but want to be. So once you take them off, there is going to be challenge. So as you know, we have the appeal court looking at 2 of those cases at the moment, so I'm not going to comment on those. But what we're after is clarity about what the register is there for, and under what processes and what interpretation of the legislation we can operate to take people off or prevent people getting on the register if we think it will be misleading. And as you know, we've been quite concerned that with such a big mandate now that we've got, some of those pieces still landing, to be spending our attention on this isn't a great use of our resource. And I think, I've said this publicly before, I think it endangers New Zealand's reputation overseas. And with brand new legislation, brand new regulatory framework, brand new regulator, that's really not something we are comfortable with. So I think we've been reasonably strong on the fact that some clarity is absolutely required.
Can you be any more precise in terms of the type of clarity that you want?
Yeah, so there's a number of areas where why you have a register, I think, needs to be kind of fundamentally questioned. But the big issue that you're referring to, that's the matter of some of the court cases, is whether entities that have, in our mind, little or no real connection with New Zealand, that aren't offering financial services in New Zealand, should nonetheless be on the register. The register was designed for New Zealanders to benefit people who are looking for financial services providers' details. So having entities that, in our mind, have little connection with New Zealand on there really doesn't make any sense at all. And where we start to get interactions with overseas regulators asking us for help on the assumption that we regulate those entities, that's not a great place for us to be when, in fact, we have no involvement with them at all.
One of the key problems seems to be that entities register on here, but they're not regulated in New Zealand, including for our anti-money laundering laws. This seems to be causing a lot of trouble overseas, that they can say we are registered in New Zealand, and people maybe perceive that to mean more than it is.
Yeah.
So I guess that area in particular needs to be addressed.
And that's one of the issues before the court. They need to be able to interpret the legislation in a way that provides clarity on that issue. So what really is required in New Zealand for you to be on the register, and then what powers, how we exercise our powers to take people off. So, fundamentally what we're after is clarity so that we can get on with our job without spending time in areas where there's disputes, which to us go to the very heart of why the rules are there in the first place.
The paper that came out, the options paper from MB, had 6 options on it. I mean, are there any particular ones that you would like to see implemented?
I think in particular a really very straightforward change to the wording in the legislation, which makes clear the degree of nexus to New Zealand that's really required for someone to be on the register. Bearing in mind, as I say, the register is designed to benefit New Zealanders, not companies operating outside of New Zealand. So yeah, real clarity on the territorial aspect.
And I know you've just had a hearing in the Court of Appeal with your Vivia case, so you're not going to go into details on that. But I guess if you could just give us some indication of, I guess, how important that is to the FMA.
It is important, and it's very well timed in the context of the MB review. And so for the Court of Appeal to basically, hopefully, take the opportunity to look at both those cases and
So that's the Excelsior one as well.
Yeah, so the two cases that they're looking at, one which we lost in the lower court and one which we won in the lower court, and provide that clarity here and now so that everyone knows what they're dealing with. Because to be fair to entities in question, they need clarity as much as we do. And so, the real benefit of it being in court now is that when that judgment comes out, if it contains some reasoned judgment on the fundamental purpose of the FSPR, that can be taken into account in the MB review, and MB can decide, whether changes on the basis of that interpretation are necessary or not.
Well, we'll look forward to that judgment.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot, Rob. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
That's Rob Everett, the Chief Executive of the Financial Markets Authority, and I'm Gareth Vaughan at interest.co.nz.